both for coming in, and I think it's very important, Carrie, that we say thank you to you for raising your head and going on record. It's a very brave thing to do, however high profile journalist you are, and it will benefit enormous numbers of women much lower down the food chain in the BBC and in other organisations, and I think that's quite important to be said. I want to ask just a few things, because you've already highlighted a whole load of things that we can ask the next panel, but particularly around this conversation with Fran Unsworth, about when you asked about equal pay, or pay parity, or whatever the terms were. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that conversation, please?
So this was the meeting at which we were deciding whether I went to China or not, and the terms on which I went. I had basically already agreed that I would. There was a discussion about how many days I would be in China a year, because I was worried about my children, and because my children my daughter had had to move school for sixth form. She wasn't able to be moved. It was too late to move her because she'd already just moved once, and she was in her first term at first year as A-levels. So there was first a discussion about how many days I could do in China a year, and I agreed to do 200 days in China a year, and that the rest I would do in the UK, because there's a lot of China that can be done pre-production and post-production, and I can do a lot of writing. But just for the record, because I see that there's some confusion about this in the media, I spent last year 214 days in China, and I spent a further 14 days on, and when I say China, I mean the majority of that, about 200 were in the mainland of China, and then another few days in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So I call it Greater China, mainland, Hong Kong, Taiwan. I was there 214 days last year, and then I did some work in Kazakhstan and some work in Poland last year, and I did the rest in London. Anyway, coming to your question about the equal pay conversation with the then head of news gathering, current director of news. I guess I'm not a lawyer. So I went into that saying, I think that I've been underpaid for, a long time at the BBC, but not absolutely. I say that again, but in comparison with male peers. And
did she comment on that? Did she comment on that when you said that?
No, she didn't. I said, I think I've been underpaid since probably about the year 2000 when I started on the news channel, possibly longer. I just didn't ask. All of us, we actually trusted the BBC. That's the problem.